What's up, gamers? I promised I would do a question and answer style video where a bunch of you left questions in the comments. Not to mention, since then, my YouTube shorts have done pretty well, so I have a bunch of comments from YouTube shorts as well. And I wanted to go through and actually give y'all some answers to those questions. And I got to shout out my lovely wife, INSANDIO. She went through like every one of my videos and every one of my shorts and compiled a whole bunch of questions from all kinds of different people and got those ready in a document for me, for one, so I didn't have to go do it. And two, so I could be a little more in the moment. I could give answers off the top of the dome instead of like, you know, preparing ahead of time and writing a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, shout out my wife. And by the way, since this is a question and answer where I'm giving you a peek behind the curtain, you know, behind the scenes, I can give you a little more info on what's going on here, where my wife, I've mentioned her in passing a few times in videos, but she handles a lot of stuff behind the scenes. She helps out with like production. She does a lot of planning and scheduling for stuff like, hey, we need to get this done. She moderates the YouTube channel. She's setting up the community Discord server. So once I give her the green light and say like, hey, I have a demo ready, we should put this live and start getting feedback, she's going to be the one managing that too. So she does a bunch of stuff that's helping me to like make this game a reality. So huge shout out to her. She's the best.
Hi peeps, this is INSANDIO, Shuffle's partner. We do have sprint meeting every week, and it's super cool to see the long list of tasks being done week after week. Shuffle has been working hard adding new systems and features to Isadora's Edge. Can't wait for the new environment artist to join the team in October. Fingers crossed! Keep supporting Shuffle and be nice to him. Bye!
And also, she recently debuted her new VTubing model, so I'll go ahead and put an info card up here with the link to her channel. She makes a bunch of cool videos about like indie games and that sort of content, like in the gaming sphere. So she's been making really cool stuff. I'm very proud of her, and if you're interested, go ahead and check out her channel. It'd mean a lot to me. I'd get some cool husband brownie points. But yeah, anyway, it's time to go through this list of questions that my lovely wife has provided me. The first question on here is, how do you get started making games? And I see there's a few different people: Shish Kogrib, Lost in the Sky, Nick Plays. People asking like, how do you actually make something? They say they have a lot of ideas, but they don't really know how to like concretely make something. How do you even just begin? It feels so like daunting. What engine do you even pick? And that's a great question. And I can tell why she put this at the top of the list, because this is something I tell her all the time. I'm very passionate about this, which is that if you want to get started making games, literally just do it. Pick any engine, it doesn't matter. Go to any tutorial video about that engine, find like the highest rated one, the most viewed, most liked, go find it and just follow along. Just make anything. If you don't have anything that comes to mind that you want to do, go download Godot. It's very lightweight. Just download it, open it up, and try to get just a simple, the Godot icon is packaged into the engine by default. Try to get the icon just appearing on screen. That's it. Make it so that when you press play in the editor, it pops up and you can see the icon. Once you've done that, then you can start, you know, experimenting a little bit. See if you can get the icon to move. See if you can have gravity. Make platforming with the icon. Just do anything. The best way to get started is to stop waiting until you're ready, because you will never feel ready. I feel like the idea of being ready for something is a myth. And if you're constantly waiting to be ready, you will just never get started. Honestly, if you want to make games and you haven't got started yet, I would prefer you turn this video off and just go and play around in Godot. And if you hear me say, go download Godot and just use it right away, and you're like, oh, but I was really thinking maybe I should use Unity, download Unity instead. I have no problems with that. If you're leaning towards one engine, if you kind of feel like you want to do Unreal, but you're not sure, just do Unreal, right? If you get started and you can't figure stuff out, and like if Unreal is like too difficult, like you can't actually make progress, which I don't believe will happen. Like blueprints should be really easy. Even if you start to like stagnate, if you can't continue making progress on whatever you're working on, just switch to a different game engine, or, you know, keep pushing through it. But the most important thing to do is just to get started. And I see that question a lot too, like what engine should you use? That I get that question all the time. And personally, I really like Godot. I'm a huge fan for it, which by the way, I have to say, like, this isn't an ad. I'm not sponsored by Godot. I didn't think I needed to say that, but I recently made a short where I was like, hey, Godot is free and open source, which is really cool. And I got comments of like, hey, this is an ad, chill, bro. How much did they pay you? You didn't even put ad in the description. That's a crime. I just like it. That's my genuine thoughts. If Godot wanted to sponsor me, that'd be awesome. I would absolutely hop in for whatever they wanted to do, but I'm not sponsored. I just love the engine. That being said, the first engine I used was the Slip Space engine. Have you heard of the Slipspace engine? If you haven't, that's because it's Halo's proprietary engine. It's the one used by 343 Industries to make Halo. That's because I got started making games at 343 Industries making Halo Infinite, right? I just got in there and I learned the engine. And even though it seems like it's not that applicable, like, you're learning a proprietary engine, that's not going to help you make, games in your free time. It totally was. A lot of the skills I learned working on games from working on Halo Infinite translate incredibly well over into Unity and Godot. As long as you can get past that feeling of needing to be ready and just get started, just jump into it. Now, you will start to hit roadblocks, right? There's plenty of people who just get started and they hit a roadblock, they can't figure something out. That's okay. I think the issue comes when you feel like getting stuck isn't making progress. It is. Getting stuck is a part of the development progress. You will spend hours and hours and hours making no progress because something isn't working, and then you will eventually figure it out. All those hours you spent stuck on that problem are beautiful progress. That's what learning a game engine is. You slowly build up all those skills, you learn all those things, and then you can apply them. It's truly one of the things I'm most passionate about is just if you want, even if you just want a little bit to make games, just get started. Just see if you like it. Because as soon as I got into the Unity game engine, way back in the day, I said the first one I used was Slipspace. I actually downloaded Unity and followed a project with it, but I didn't use it for anything past that. The very first thing I ever did in Unity was just make like a little like Space Invaders clone. Let me tell you, those early days of just getting into the engine and just making stuff and playing with stuff are super fun. And if you get in there and you're having a good time, that will help you continue learning new stuff. Just don't beat yourself up and, take your time with it. Now, I do come from a background of like, I got a degree in computer science and software engineering, and I'm like a skilled programmer, and I did like software engineering at Amazon for years that was unrelated to the games industry. So I already had that sort of like programming experience, which made it easier to jump between engines since I could just like program in any of them without much issue. But I think especially Godot, their scripting language is very easy to get into. It's very straightforward and very simple. If you just follow along with some tutorials and make sure you understand what like the things they're doing, when they say, oh, call this function, make sure you understand like what that means. And just by learning that in any engine, it will translate across. If you learn basic scripting by working in Godot, that GD script that you learned will transfer over very well if you want to learn C# later. So just pick an engine and get something moving around. That's how I would advise getting started. If you're running into issues that you literally can't get past, if you're completely blocked, then you can go around and start looking for help. You can reach out to communities. You can pop into like an official Godot Discord or go to the servers and just ask questions, and people will be more than happy to help you. Yeah, I'm very passionate about that. I love people making games. It's why I started making the Game Dev Secrets in the first place. And I think that game development is one of the greatest hobbies you can have. It's awesome. So everyone out there who wants to get started, please go do it. But I've been ranting about how I feel about getting started on game development, so I guess I'll go to the next question. The next question on the list is the one I get the second most often, which is what's the platform for the release going to be? I saw one in there for, is it coming to Steam Deck, one for Switch, someone asked me about PS4, and I briefly touched on it in my last video, so I'll put that in an info card too. Boom, I actually can remember which side the little card goes on now. I will obviously be releasing on PC first on Steam. I haven't looked into Steam Deck support that much, but it seems like I just have to get a Steam Deck and then make sure it runs on the Steam Deck. So presumably I will be able to release on Steam Deck as well, because it's also basically just a PC build. But so I will try to release on Steam Deck as long as there aren't any complications I'm unaware of. So I think I'll be able to do that. And then for PS4, Switch, like console releases, those will be really contingent on the Kickstarter and whether those stretch goals are met. But I did also read that the people working on Godot are trying to make like some sort of deal with at least Sony, but maybe Nintendo as well, to get like a special version of the SDK that can be released without breaking the non-disclosure agreement, so that it can be like publicly available. And then I read that there's a partner that does the porting, like one of those like porting companies that has made the commitment that if Sony and Nintendo like follow through on that deal, they will just release their like porting thing so that it should become available for everyone to export to like the Nintendo Switch or the PlayStation 4. And if that does happen, then I can easily release on the Switch and the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 for that matter. So really the only reason I would not do it is because of like technical limitations. And as long as I either have the funding to get past them or they get dropped, I will absolutely do it. So yeah. And honestly, it would be a dream to release on Switch. I love the Nintendo Switch. That's my favorite console. I'm such a Nintendo fanboy. I love Nintendo so much. So having my game on the Switch would be like a dream come true. So I really hope I can do that for sure. The next question is, what's a good resolution for pixel art? Now, There are lots of complications. I could probably ramble for a long time. Instead, I will be helpful and give you a great answer, which is that you should either do 640 by 360 or 320 by 180. And the reason for that is because pixel art looks best when it's scaled at like integer values, when it's a whole number. So if it gets twice as big, 3 times as big, 4 times as big, 5 times as big, that's when it looks best. You don't want pixel art to be stretched up by like 4.2 or stretched up by, 317%. Those values don't look nearly as good. You really want it to be those whole numbers. And the reason that 640 by 360 and 320 by 180 are so nice is because they scale at whole numbers to the main monitor types. There's 1080p, and then there's 2K, which is also 1440p, and then there's 4K, which is like 3840 by 2160. Is that right? That's off the top of the dome. And those three are the most common like consumer monitor resolutions. And 640 by 360 scales completely evenly into all three of those. And so does 320 by 180. Obviously it has to, because it is a multiple. It is half of the other one. So if that one scales evenly, it does. Again, math. And maybe Editor Senpai can throw up a table that shows that like 640 times 3 is 1920, times 4 is like 2560, and times 6 is... Hopefully this table makes it clear. Now, another common resolution is like 480 by 270, I believe. And that's because that scales evenly into 1080p and 4K, but it doesn't scale evenly into 1440p. But you can do stuff to get around it, like you use black bars if you're upscaling to 2K, or you can just not worry about the extra stretch. But if it were me, and it is me, Isadora's Edge is 640 by 360. I would recommend using that, or 320 by 180 if you're going for like a smaller resolution. 480 by 270 if neither of those suit your needs and you really need something else and you're not worried about the 2K support. Use one of those. That's my recommendation. All right. Next question. The next question is, is that the fur that plays Mario Odyssey? Is that Mario Odyssey fur? No, it's not. I had a miscommunication with Editor Senpai when we're talking about fur, the pixel artist animator that does all the incredible animations for my game, and got it mixed up that it was the Super Mario Odyssey fur. So I think Editor Senpai was using his profile picture instead of the correct profile picture for fur, which is probably why a lot of people got it mixed up. But no, that is not the right fur. The fur working on the game is fur with an E, and they are @oftetris on Twitter. I will put their link in an info card as well if I'm allowed to have just as many info cards as I want. Boom, 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 boom. And bro, fur is incredible. He is the greatest. I say this unironically with no hyperbole whatsoever. It is my 100% true opinion that fur is the best pixel art animator on the planet. His animations are on another level, man. I love his animations. Like, I've actually gotten the question before. It's not in the list, but I've gotten DM before. It's like, how did you start working with fur? Like, how did he end up doing the pixel art for the game? And if I'm being honest with you, I follow a lot of pixel artists on Twitter. I scroll through pixel art way too often. It is not good for me, but I love looking at pixel artists on Twitter. And Fur was my favorite. I was in love with his character designs, his animations, and I was like, man, I want to make this game, and I want him to do the art and animation for it. He was absolutely my first choice by like a wide margin. And so I just reached out to him, and to my surprise, he was totally down. He was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make this game. And Fur is also a big fan of Hollow Knight, so this style of game is right up his alley too. So, but not only that, Fur has been an absolute delight to work with. He's like super chill. He responds to feedback well, has good like conversations. He's willing to like put his foot down on like design stuff, or I'm like, maybe it should be like this. He's like, no, it's better like this. I'm like, well, I trust the artist. So, yeah, such a blessing to have Fur on the team. He is incredible. And if you haven't followed him, actually, Editor Senpai, maybe throw up one of his like iconic animations. He has one with like gauntlets where she does like this cool like punch combo. So you can see the kind of work he was putting on Twitter that drew me to him in the first place. And yeah, if you haven't already followed Fur on Twitter, then I would highly recommend it. He is incredible. And if you are interested in the game I'm making, it's probably in large part because of how good the pixel art is, which is thanks to Fur. So not Super Mario Odyssey Fur, but he is incredible. And on that note, the team working on the game right now is me, my wife INSANDIO, who's doing a bunch of production stuff and community management stuff, Fur doing the pixel art animations, and then Editor Senpai, who is the one currently editing this video. My editor is a friend I know from way back in the day. I think we met in first grade or something. Yeah, I've known him my whole life. He's been one of, if not my best friend for like more than 20 years at this point. Love the guy to death. Editor Senpai, you're the greatest. Yo, Kiddens from the future here, because I totally forgot to mention my buddy Extranji. He's been helping me with a lot of lore behind the scenes, like reading through all my like documentation, making sure the enemies make sense, making sure I'm not making any like huge blunders with the story, any like plot holes, and making sure everything is just good. He's really good at writing. Honestly, I'm surprised dude's not an author. He's kind of a genius. So he's been helping me out with a lot of that stuff. And also he's agreed to do like some community management once the Discord's up. And he's done that before with like running community events and stuff like that. So it'll be great to have him in there to do a lot of fun stuff with the community. So I just wanted to make sure I recorded this to get him in there. We've had a couple environment artists on the project where it's been sort of hard to tie that down. And then we ended up doing a lot of work with Mango that I mentioned in the previous devlog as well, that he had to step back from the project due to like personal health concerns. So I will update everyone when we end up with a new environment artist that's like working on stuff. That's one of the big things that's sort of like pushing the demo back too. Once I have nailed down an environment artist to work with, then we'll be in a really good spot to get the demo out. But yeah, so no, it's not the Odyssey fur. Okay. It's kind of about like the game structure. It's like a couple questions. One, there's several people who have asked, like, is it a Metroidvania? You've talked about how the game has 4 main levels. How long do you plan on those levels being? And as an extension, what's the game's overall length? I'll sort of talk about the game structure where no, I'm not planning on doing a Metroidvania. I mean, right now, the plan is to have first like an introductory level, like a tutorial level, sort of Mega Man X tutorial introduction level coded, right? Where you play through, you learn the mechanics, you fight like the first main boss. It's very like just to set the scene and give you like the basic introduction to the story. And then after you finish the tutorial level, there are 4 levels that immediately become open to you. Like in Mega Man, you immediately can choose between like 8 levels in most of the games. Each of those levels will be like the first main area, then the mid boss, then the second main area, and then the final boss. And the reason I have it split up like that is because I really like the 8 boss structure of Mega Man. I feel like that's a good amount of content, but I was worried about being able to build out 8 different worlds. Like if each of the level I want to have like a unique cultural background and history and all kinds of cool details to it and its own story, I felt like that would be a lot of scope to have 8 of those really well-built levels. So instead, I can make 4 really well-built levels where the mid-boss kind of acts like another final boss. So each level, I'm thinking of it in terms of being 2 levels long. I'll probably even make it so that you can return to like level select after you beat the mid-boss, and then you can come right back in the middle of the level if you want to. And so that's sort of just to make sure that we can really dive in on like the cultural and story details for each of the levels while also having enough really cool boss fights. And then also it saves us some effort if we can like use enemies multiple times throughout the one level. That lets us build more gameplay into the level without needing to make more and more assets. So everything is kind of being designed around this idea of keeping the scope like relatively reasonable for such a small team, especially since I'm doing the design and the programming. So yeah, that's sort of the structure of the world. And then after you beat the 4 main levels, there's like the final level. And then I'm still planning on doing like a true ending level, which is would be short, but have like, you know, the true final boss of the game or whatever. And then also I want to do a bunch of secret bosses because my favorite part of Hollow Knight is all the fun boss fights. And I like how in like the Mega Man X games and stuff, you have those really cool level gameplays, but I'm really like, it feels like the challenge to get to the reward of doing a fun boss fight. And so I want to have those. I'd really like to index into a bunch of cool boss fights. And what's more rewarding when you find a secret than leading you to a hidden boss? And so my plan with that is to have it so that you find like coordinates in the level. You find like a secret area, you grab some coordinates, and when you go back to the level select, it adds that like secret boss location to your map using those coordinates, right? So that's sort of the structure I'm picturing for the game right now. I'd love to hear some feedback on what you think about that sort of structure and if it makes sense to you, but that's what I'm envisioning right now. That brings us to the next question, which is, when's the game coming out? I've gotten quite a lot of that too. Boy, I wish I could tell you. I've already spent 2.5 years and some change working on it, but almost all of that time has been like part-time, like after work. And so progress is slow, especially because I'm also trying to run this YouTube channel, which eats into a lot of time that I would otherwise just straight up be spending on development. So everything can move a little bit slower, but my goal is to have the demo out and playable sometime early next year. If I have it out before May of next year, I would be stoked. So anything before then. And that includes the fact that I need to have a play testable version, like an alpha, that I can send out to trusted playtesters, run it on the community Discord, get feedback, and make changes so that when I release the demo and the Kickstarter with the demo, it's like an actual like vertical slice. One level of gameplay is essentially like rubber stamped, like this is what the game is going to be. And then it's just repeat the process that I had to do to get to that one demo level for the other levels of the game. And I have a lot of the underlying systems like pretty well defined at this point. Obviously, I'll need to keep adding stuff as it pops up, but I have a lot of cool systems under the hood that I've, created over the past several years that I can use to build out the level gameplay. Yeah, with that in mind, it's probably an alpha version of the demo for the people watching this video are likely the target audience of like trusted playtesters. So a playable alpha PC build coming early next year, if things go well, into a playable demo shortly after that. If the game releases at some point in 2026, that would be an incredible success. I would consider that like everything has gone incredibly well. And maybe that's like a little pessimistic, but I would rather under promise. I would hate for people to be like, oh, the game was supposed to come out 3 months ago. You know, I ain't trying to be Silksong. Kenneth from the future again, just to clarify that when I say hopefully the demo's out before May of next year, that is a big hopeful. You know, don't put it in your calendar. I don't want to let anyone down. I'm not making any promises. Same with 2026. That's not necessarily a goal so much as it would be really nice if it happens by then. So at this point, I'm just hopeful that things go well, especially because I just started a new job. So that's been taking up quite a lot of my extra mental energy. So I haven't been making as much progress over the past week or so as I normally would like to. But yeah, just wanted to clarify on those timelines. I said, I'm really not trying to be Silksong. All right. Back to the video. That's the plan right now. Oh, I kind of preempted one of the questions Insandio got here. It's several questions along the line of what game engine do you use and what would you recommend for beginners? And I use Godot, and I would recommend Godot, and go download Godot. Especially because Godot is extremely lightweight, extremely easy to jump in and out. And if you end up not liking it, you can delete it super easily. Whenever a decision is easily reversible, you can just jump in and get started. If you spend a couple hours in Godot and immediately decide you hate it, yeah, you can just delete it. It didn't even take that long to download in the first place. So when a decision is easily reversible, you can just pop in without worrying too much. So I would recommend Godot. I was thinking about making a long video breaking down a bunch of pros and cons of the Godot engine, but I was I'm not allowing myself to do that until I release a video saying, hey, just go download Godot and use it. I don't want to make it any harder for people to get started. There's already so many people that sort of just what's the word? There's a lot of people that evangelize, a lot of people out there that's talking about how hard the game industry is, and you have to make something super unique, and if a game takes more than 2 years to make, it's a failure. And they say all kinds of stuff that it feels like the point of it is to discourage developers or make it seem harder than it is. Bro, just create literally anything you want. If you want to make a game, just go start working on it. It's totally fine. You don't have to listen to those people who say it's a dying industry, you'll never compete, your game will never get views on Steam. Who cares? The point of making art isn't necessarily for people to download. If you want to start a business, then maybe this advice isn't for you. But if you love games as an art form and you just want to make some art, just go make some art, dude. Godot. So this is a really interesting question, and I will get to the meat of it by saying, so I was wondering if you have a story Bible for your game, and if so, is that something you'd be willing to talk about in the future? Isadora is already a pretty cool character and concept. Seeing more of this world would be pretty sweet. Thank you. I appreciate the comment. I really love Isadora as a character, and yeah, I definitely have a story Bible. I have so much stuff written behind the scenes. For example, maybe the most egregious case is that I have a Mushroom Society document that goes through the culture of the Ushroot society from before the corruption spread through the forest, so I could get a sense of what kind of details need to be included in the environment art and the story for that area. For example, one of the sections in the culture document, I think the culture document's nearly 15 pages long, is what do they eat, how do they eat, and when do they eat? And so I wrote this whole thing about how the mushrooms have developed some technology that essentially decays stuff for them faster because mushrooms rotten material to grow. So rather than having an oven that cooks a thing, they have a little box that decays a thing. Yeah, especially since they have some magic to them. Maybe there can be some rune stones on the box, that sort of stuff. Which also means that a lot of the big communal areas, like the chef, the kitchens, any place with a big kitchen, is kind of stinky. And then stuff about cultural events they have where they meet with their Allfather, because the Ushroot Society is kind of a hive mind run by the Allfather, where they would meet with the Allfather and all connect to the shared dream that had been carefully crafted by certain Ushroots that were called dream weavers. And it's whenever the dream weavers come up with a new dream for everyone to experience together, they call it the dream weevil. And it's an interactive movie almost, where you can go in and everyone walks through it. It's essentially super VR. And those dream weavers are game developers, I guess. I have a lot of stuff in the story Bible, and there's all kinds of different cultures that I've defined and how the different lands interact with each other. Editor Senpai is actually writing a custom language for the Ushroot because they communicate telepathically, and so he's taken into consideration the fact that they communicate telepathically, so they're not necessarily limited by what they can form with their mouths. And then their writing system is mostly runes that they see in their head, but then they had to figure out a way to communicate that to humans, so they are limited to being able to scratch with their feet and stuff. So Editor Senpai, if you want to show some of the stuff you've written for that on screen, go ahead. Lots of story Bible stuff, and I would definitely be willing to talk about it. I just need to figure out how to put that in a video where it wouldn't be an extremely boring rundown of me reading the 15 pages of the Ushroot culture to you. Maybe that's something that I can discuss on Reddit or something, which brings me to the point of when I first asked for questions to answer in a question and answer video. It was before my shorts went kind of viral, and I think back then when I asked for those questions and answers, I had 2,000 subscribers. And I had like a bunch of OGs, like shout out my OGs, you know who you are, Rocky Mullet Dev, all the Niels Muller Cleve, you know who you are, OGs, and they would comment on all my videos. So I was expecting the questions I got to pretty much exclusively be from those OGs, but since then we've had a bit of a boom. Which is great, but it makes the comment section a lot harder to go through, and YouTube's comments are really, really not good for discussion or for like sorting and keeping track of stuff. So I created an Inbound Shovel subreddit, and if you want to ask questions that I can answer in like a future video, or if you just want to discuss something, if you want to ask questions about the Ushroot Society, you want me to like share cultural details, go ahead and make posts on the subreddit. I'll probably do some form of like Reddit recap. I'll go ahead and commit to that for all of you. I'll do a Reddit recap where I go through like a monthly or every couple months, or depending on how many posts there are, and like react to the top stuff from the subreddit, including if you want like feedback on your game. I would love to provide feedback, because it's also an opportunity for me to get wish lists to you in your game. So if you're working on a game and it's available on Steam, you want some wish lists and you want people's eyes on it, you want some feedback, feel free to post it on my subreddit. And if I'm able to react to it on video, then you'll have some eyes on it. I'll call for wish lists for you, all that good stuff. I really want my channel and my subreddit and everything about this to be the communal space that was why I created it in the first place. Was that I really like sharing my development progress and talking with other people about the development they were doing. So I'd like to foster that in any way I can. So if you want to go use the Reddit I created, that's awesome. If you don't, that's also fine. But just wanted to say that before the video ends. Let's see, how many more questions do I have on here? The next question is, what is the music you use in your YouTube shorts? I've gotten several questions about the music. I love the music in the game. I got to answer quickly. I've been working with a musician, and we're going to release, I've already talked with him about the details about it, and we're going to release the Isadora's Edge soundtrack. The music in all of my YouTube shorts is the Bobo boss music. Probably Editor Senpai has it playing right now, so you can hear it. I love this track. It's awesome. We have a few other tracks we've already made, and we're going to release it as a soundtrack, probably on like Spotify and stuff. And I'll probably put it on YouTube too. It'll probably be on Spotify. I'll probably put it on my YouTube channel as like a playlist where you can go and listen to the music if you want to. So we're past my time limit. Hunter will have to forgive me. I got one last question here that I really want to answer. I can't get to the rest of them, but someone asked and they said, try as I might in Godot, I can't seem to find a consistent answer on applying a normal map to an animated sprite. Do you use a static sprite node and hand animate the sprites through code? So I actually use Sprite 2D nodes and an animation player. This is a randomly very technical question in the middle of a lot of fluff, but I use a Sprite 2D node with an animation player for most of my stuff, but you like to use animated sprites somewhere. The problem you're probably running into is that you are using like the compressed texture 2D, which is what you get when you just import an image. Like if you export your sprite sheet from Sprite or whatever, and you import it into Godot, it'll be a compressed texture 2D. And when you animate that with an animated sprite, there's like no way to add a normal map to it. So instead, right click in the file system and create your own resource. And you want to create a texture 2D object called the canvas texture 2D. The canvas texture 2D is the same thing as the compressed texture 2D, except for you can add multiple textures to it. So the diffuse field in this is the same as the compressed texture. So that's where you can put your normal sprite sheet. Then there's a normal map that you can add the normal map to. And then when you're creating your sprite frames for the animated sprite 2D, instead of using the compressed texture 2D, use the new resource you created, and then you'll be animating that canvas texture that has the normal map data. But yeah, so that's a really quick breakdown that I wanted to include in here because I saw it and I was like, someone needs some technical help. I gotta include it. I unfortunately can't answer any more questions because my editor told me that if I send him another raw devlog footage that's more than 35 minutes long, he's going to string me up by my fingernails. And this is already, 37 minutes? So I hope you liked those questions, those answers, all that good stuff. And thanks for watching. If you haven't already wishlisted the game on Steam, go and check it out on Steam. If you haven't followed the Kickstarter and you're interested, go ahead and follow the Kickstarter. And I'll see you in the next video, everyone. Deuces! Peace out!